All right. So why don't we get started? Here's our next shaila. Sho'al talit mi beit hakneset v'nikra. A guy borrows a talis from the shul and it tears. Ever that ever happened? Sha'alti mi beit hakneset talis la'alot laduchen v'hatalis nikra ba'oines. Ha'im ani chayev ba'onsen. I borrowed a talis from the shul because I'm a kohen. I'm a single guy and I needed to duchen. Or it could be I came to the bayit and I just came traveling without my talis and I needed to borrow a talis. So
That probably happens more often.
yeah, well, certainly not duchna, yeah. So ha'im ani chayev ba'onsin, and the talis tears completely by accident. Am I liable for onus because I'm a borrower? So what say you? It would seem l'chora it's an open and shut case, right?
I don't think so.
You're a shoel. You're shoel borrowing something. Good morning.
This is something that goes through use on a regular basis. And it will come to an end.
What do you mean?
For a while. Talis is not going to last forever. Things get used wear and tear.
Talis never last forever. But it's not like it's a fragile, brittle, piece of ancient. What was it? What do they call it? The Shroud of Turin. It's a talis. And what happened was it got snagged on something, and someone jerked it, or someone stepped on it as I was taking it off, and it tore, or whatever.
So it got damaged during regular use.
During Kiddush, both of you said that at the same time. What if I get herring stain?
No, during regular use.
Choshen stains or something. And
That's different. First of all, you don't get to for a document.
Yeah.
But and I think there's a big difference between having something staying because you're eating. It's a different act completely. You have to take full responsibility for that.
It's not minus, that's a negligence.
Yeah.
Well, let's review what we had learned previously when I borrow a sefer, right? When I borrow a sefer, what did we say? That since I'm doing it for a mitzvah and the owner of the sefer is benefiting through my learning Torah, so then maybe I would no longer be considered to be fully liable for onus.
who's benefiting from borrowing a talis in a shul that's guy left the talis here, but they left here.
You know how many times people have said what a privilege it is for us to have them as a member? Do you know what a privilege it is to have that guy duchen for us? In his own mind, he feels he's actually doing the greatest service of the shul to step in our doors, to use our services, and you expect him to pay membership? What a chutzpah of the shul. The shul has the greatest privilege to have this man bless the entire kahal, and he should have to pay for the measly cheap talis that tore.
The guy in the Kiddush, though, it's like the guy with the sefer who's not learning the sefer.
Yeah.
No, but when it rips, he used it. It got damaged during regular use when he was up there duchening.
Yeah, so Izzy also wants to raise the issue of maybe it's called Mesa Machmas Malacha, that it's in the course of regular use that it tears. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the issues. Let's deal with two subjects. Number one, Ha'im Hashoa L'Dvar Mitzvah Chayev Ba'onsa. When you borrow something for mitzvah performance, are you considered to be a shoel, to be liable for all mishaps? Now, remember, there are two arguments. Number one, the owner of the object is benefiting through your performance of the mitzvah. And also, you're not really considered to be benefiting because mitzvahs lav lehanos nitnu, that mitzvot are not for the purpose of personal benefit. So the whole reason that a shoel is completely liable for all mishaps is because he's the sole beneficiary. But what if you could argue that when I'm doing a mitzvah, I'm not the beneficiary personally, I'm doing this for Hashem, and so I'm not really benefiting. So number two, that's the first question. Question number two is, Ma din ha'achrayus shel hamakabel matana al menas lahachzir. What is the level of liability of a person who receives a gift that becomes his during the times of its use and then has to return it? Now, the question here may be that in order for me to be able to make a bracha on the talis, I have to acquire the talis for myself during the period of time. And maybe that's different from a shoel where ownership never leaves the possession of the owner. Whereas here, maybe you could argue that when I'm borrowing the shul's talis, it temporarily becomes mine. And it's maybe a different halachic status. So let's take a look at these two issues. Aleph. Ha'imamrinan shahashoel chayiv ba'onsen, me'achar shekol hatam shahashol chayiv ba'onsen, u'mishum shekol hana shelo. Normally, we say the reason why a shoel is liable for all mishaps is because all the benefit is to him. Aval b'shoel idvar mitzvah kivin te'in kol hana shel hashol ki gam hamashol nehene. But he says, but in a situation where you're borrowing something to do a mitzvah with the object, he says not all the benefit is for the borrower because the lender also benefits. The synagogue has the great privilege of having you do a mitzvah for them. Va'od de'ein ze nechshav shahashol nehna mehatalis. And furthermore, maybe it's not really considered that the shoel is getting personal benefit from the talis. The hakaimel on mitzvahs lav lehanos nitnu. Right, the exact two arguments that we saw in the previous tshuva. Memela lo yihi chayiv ba'onsen, and maybe therefore he's not liable for mishaps. The kevin shenechluku bazeh haposkim hamuchzak yachol liton kimli shuhu pater u'chamoshe kasavnu b'tshuva le'el. And so we wrote, he says, I wrote it in Tshuva Kuf Tes Vav 115. This is 118. So we saw it like 3 tshuvas ago, that there's a machlokes when you borrow a mitzvah item like a sefer, and the same thing will be with a talis, that since I'm doing a mitzvah with it, there's a machlokes, whether I'm judged as a regular shoel or I'm a special case shoel and I'm not going to be fully liable. And therefore, the borrower could say, if the synagogue sends him an invoice to pay for the talis, I don't paskin like that. I paskin like those who say that when you borrow something for a mitzvah, you're not fully liable. So let's go back to the footnotes. It really is just a review of what we saw before. Okay, so we don't have to go back and review the footnotes. Next, Beis. Uvedin ze ha'im hashol nechshav shekibel es hatalis b'matana al menas lahachzir. The second issue is maybe the shoel is not a regular shoel because he, during the period of while he's wearing it, he's considered to be the owner of the talis. Hine kasav marin b'shulchan aruch mutar likach talis chaveru levarich aleha ubilvad sheyikapel ota im mitza'ah mekupelet. It is the Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim paskins that you're allowed to borrow your friend's talis on the proviso that you fold it. If you found it folded, you must return it in the state that you found it. So if it was folded when you picked it up, you must fold it again and put it back. You can't just crumple it up. You know, let me just get on my soapbox. There's a lot of soapbox issues with this tshuva. I've been triggered severely with this tshuva. Number one, the fact that people think it's a privilege for them to come to our synagogue, which of course it is. We're so honored that when people choose to daven here, to the point where we should actually be paying them to attend the shul instead of them paying us. And there are people who believe that. There are people who feel that, and that's okay, so that's why these people don't become members, because they're actually honoring us. Okay, so that's number one. I got to get that out of my system. Okay, yeah, this is on YouTube. Number two. What was I about? Yeah, I was talking about the. I was talking about the folded talis. A guy gets up to daven for mincha or ma'ariv, And what does he do? He takes a talis that's folded right next to the amud, and then he crumples it up and puts it on the bima when he's done. Come on, be a mensch. Like, who taught you manners? Like, where did you grow up? Would your mother accept that kind of behavior if you were treating something in your mother's house and you took something out of the closet and you just crumple it up and leave it there? Come on,
But they're very full, they don't fold on Shabbos, they don't fold on Talis, right?
I'm talking about Wednesday. Yeah, they're machmir on Wednesdays too. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's basic derech eretz. And so what I do, I make a point. If I find a crumpled talis in the shul, I will fold it in front of everybody. I want people to see, like, it's not beneath your dignity to fold the talis. The Gemara says that Yehoshua ben Nun was zocha to leadership because he cleaned the Beis Medrash after everyone had left. Now, you're going to ask me, well, what Beis Medrash was there in Mitzrayim? I have no idea. But he took it upon himself that's what the Gemara says, that Yehoshua ben Nun was zocha to Gedula because he cleaned up afterwards. He put the Sfarim away, he folded the Talesim, and he was a mensch. He had a good mother who brought him up properly, that you don't leave a room a mess just because it's the public room and the janitors will take care of it. So, okay, that's my second soapbox. Next. All right, you'll let people know if you ever see a crumpled up tallis. I just don't get it. Because, again, it's the same guy. He doesn't want to pay membership because it's an honor for us to have him daven for the Amud. So therefore, why should he have to fold up the tallis? Anyway, let's go further. I'm not sure if I've gotten that on my system yet, but at least you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, I'm just getting warm. The Katav Hamagin Avram Sham, Saruch Ian, the Bishlam Alitol Esatal is Shari, the Nichale Leinish Lemevad Mitzvah Bimamone, Avalama Yavarech Aleha. So the Magen Avram says, I can understand that you're allowed to borrow someone else's talis, because we assume that a person is happy for you to use his property. But how can you make a bracha on someone else's talis? You can't make a bracha on someone else's talis because it has to be yours. Now, I'm not sure where the Magen Avram gets this idea that in order to make a bracha on a talis, it needs to be yours. Now, the argument goes like this: the bishlamakish sha'ala midas havale ki'ilu nasno b'matal menas lahavzer. So the Magen Avram says, if you borrow it with his permission, so then he gives it to you for that period of time temporarily, it's yours, and therefore you can make a bracha. It's called a matana manas lahavzer. It's yours for the next hour as long as you return it. Harash v'lochein efshar levarech alav v'hu adin belulav im hishilu latzeis bo yotze yedei chavasa. And similarly with a lulav, if I give you a lulav, remember on the first day of Sukkot, it says ulakachtem lachem bayom harishon, that the lulav has to belong to the person who's holding it in order for him to fulfill the mitzvah. So that's why I give it to you. Yachal levarech alav avolakachas below daito aser. But to take it unknowingly without the owner's knowledge, and based it on an assumption that he would want you to have it, why is it permissible to make a bracha when he didn't have das to make it yours? Because of the afal gav de poter mitzitzis kevin shehitalis she'ula, and the Magen Avram answers that a borrowed talis, I guess maybe it's based on the language of the pasuk. Ve'asu lahem tzitzis al kanfei vigdehem. They shall make for themselves tzitzis on the corners of their garments. So the Magen Avram says, and I'm not sure, we have to, maybe we'll look up the Aruch HaShulchan in a moment. So what's the source that in order to be chayav in tzitzis, the garment must belong to me? Mikol makom rashai, by the way, that would be a solution if you ever, let's say, are wearing a four-cornered garment without tzitzis. Just give it as a gift to, I don't know, to your wife and say, may I borrow the talis from you? And then at least you won't be in violation of a deoraisa. Mikol makom rashai levarech kamo shehanashim mevarchos al mitzvah saseh she'azman grama. So The Magen Avram answers that it's still permissible to make a bracha on a borrowed talis that's not yours, just like a woman can make a bracha on a mitzvah that she's exempt from. Granted, you're putter from tzitzis, but if you want to do the mitzvah of tzitzis when you're putter, you still can. Just like a woman who wants to make a bracha leishev basukah, even if she's putter from sukkah, she can make a bracha because it's a time-bound mitzvah. So let's see the footnote here for a second. B'tzarech iyun dahadas marna shulchan aruch she'en lanashim levracha mitzvah sasei she'azman grama ve'ich pirush hamagen Avram kain b'das mara. So the question is, the Sephardic custom is based on the psak of the Mechaber, who says that women do not make a bracha to sit in the sukkah. Ashkenazim do, because we rely on those Rishonim who say that even though a woman is putter from a mitzvah, if she wants to make a bracha, she can. But there are other, I think it's the Rambam that the Shulchan Aruch bases himself on, who says, no, a woman should not make a bracha. And that's why Sephardic women do not make a bracha when they come into the sukkah. It's one of the major, what does your wife do?
Whatever I do.
Okay, yeah. I guess she became an Ashkenazi when she married you. But you should ask her, like, what did you do when you were single? Did you make a bracha in the sukkah? So he says, so how can the Magen Avram explain this idea within the Shita of the Shulchan Aruch? It's one thing to explain it within the Shita of the Ramah, which is Minhag Ashkenaz, that you can make a bracha on a talis even though you're putter, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't hold that way. Shuv ra'isi sheken hiksha hagon Rabbi Kiva Eger sham bahagal divrei Magen Avram. That's Rabbi Kiva Eger's question. V'chein hiksha maimer Mordechai ubir b'das marin zespir leishef shelavarach al talis sheula im hikvar mitzuyetzet ayin sham. And he explains that the Shulchan Aruch will agree that even though a four-cornered garment is putter from tzitzis if it's not mine, but if I've already put tzitzis on it, then I'm permitted to make a bracha, even though I'm not chayiv in the mitzvah. So I'm not really sure what that means. I don't really understand it, but we'll accept it for now. Okay, I don't really understand why this is different. So bottom line is, he says, Hare behedja the imshoel birishus haba'olim zenechshav keilu nisano lo b'matana. So if you borrow a talis with the permission of the owner, then it's considered to be that the owner temporarily gifted you the talis. Because of ataz sham shekain das harash, dahavi kinastan lo b'matana manas lahachzer, midi dahava ashoyel chaluk mechaver v'hodiu shaholech levaker chaver chola umeis lomeis shirashai likroes habeged ayin sham. He says it's very similar to an interesting psak from the Rush. The Rush says, if I borrow a shirt from you and I say, can I borrow your fancy shirt? I want to go visit a sick person in the hospital. I get there and he dies. And can I tear kriya? You're supposed to tear kriya upon someone's death. But I borrowed the guy's shirt. The Rush says you can tear kriya. Why? Because during the period that he gave it to you, he was giving it to you as a gift to treat as if it's yours, even though you don't tear kriya on a garment that doesn't belong to you, but during the period of borrowing, it's considered to be yours.
You're saying it's a matana manas lahatzir, right? So one of the conditions of return would be return in the same condition I gave it to you when you're done.
Yeah, but now it could be that he'll have to pay for the tear. He'll have to pay for the repair or pay for a new shirt. But the question is he permitted to tear
In the
first place? And so the Rush paskins, you're permitted to tear because it's your shirt during that period of time. Like, in other words, there's two issues. Who's financially liable for the damage to the shirt? And is it permitted to lichatchila damage someone else's property? This in the first place. So the answer is you're permitted to damage it because during the period that you're borrowing it, it's considered yours. Now, as far as making restitution, when you return it, that's a separate issue.
And also, wouldn't it be who you're returning the kriya for?
But it's
Like,
like,
what if it's, you're walking through a hospital and you just hear somebody.
Right, so
it's a
generally, we
relative
only
died.
tear kriya for a close relative, or it could be a rebbe. So let's say your Rav passes away, right? Right, so that would be another example. Okay, yeah.
If someone, if their doctor flying up there doesn't have Thomas for Aliyah, and he takes that Thomas, he just give it to him, put it on him, send him up there. Does he have to say bracha at that point?
So this is part of this whole shiloh that we're deliberating over. Is a shul talis the same thing as a private talis? Now, I think Rav Shirag is working under that assumption, but maybe not. We'll have to see where this goes. But I have a psak that I've always worked with from my Rebbe of blessed memory, or of Kinneric. He told me, and I think he based it on the Mishnah Berurah somewhere, that when you borrow a talis from a shul, it's not the same thing as borrowing a talis from an individual. Borrowing a talis from an individual is like it's your talis during that period of time, and therefore you make a bracha on it. But when you borrow a talis from a shul, it may not be considered of the same status. That's number one. Because maybe there's no real sentient entity that's saying, here, by all means, borrow my talis. Secondly, if you're only borrowing the talis for kavod hatzibur, to honor the congregation, that may be different from wearing a talis for tefillah. And so if you're doing it just to be able to, like you're a bacher and you just need a talis so that you can lead the davening, that may not occupy the same requirement of making a bracha on a talis as we do for when you're davening.
so they're having a Aliyah or a Hadbadul.
Yeah.
You expect the bacher to make a bracha on the.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. We don't expect them to
We
make a
don't,
bracha.
if it's just for those who've been davening
Yeah.
in the Amid, if it's something more.
Yeah, even davening for the Yamid, we wouldn't require it because it's kavod hatzibur. It's only for kavod hatzibur that he's putting on the talis. He's not putting on the talis because this is his normal mode of dress for tefillah, in which case you would make a bracha.
I heard as well, concerning the way that if you're a member of the shul, look, like, I don't know, the license belongs to the member.
Oh, that's an interesting argument. So then you would make, that's an argument to make a bracha, Cyril. Yeah.
Rabbi, just so the purpose of wearing purpose of wearing a talis for mincha, if you're shliach tzibur, you're doing it for kavod hatzibur.
Yeah.
So
When-
then if
when-
that's kavod hatzibur, then why do we allow people sometimes who are leading davening to probably not appropriately dress, whether they're not wearing a jacket, they're not wearing a proper clothing, because that would be kavod hatzibur too.
Don't get us started.
Sandals and shorts.
Yeah.
It's an appropriate question for someone in the clothing business. When people ask me about this, I know there used to be a policy at the shul that no jacket, no service. Yeah, right. No jacket, you can't be the shliach tzibur. And people ask me, Rabbi, what do you think? I said, I come from California, where you're fortunate if the guy's wearing pants, that gets up to lead the davening. So.
In Israel, it's very.
Yeah.
Wearing sandals and shorts.
It is, yeah. So I think it all depends on the convention. I think that perhaps maybe 50 years ago, it would have been more appropriate to have such a policy. But I think that in today's world where everyone's much more loosey-goosey, that it's a little bit harder to make that argument. And that's really the reason why we do ask everybody to put on a talis when they lead the davening, because a lot of times people are wearing a t-shirt, and it'll say, Leafs, or something.
Go Leafs go.
Go Leafs go, right? And you got that guy with the Go Leafs go leading the davening, and it does look a little bit bizarre, right? So if he puts on a talus, that sort of covers the outerwear, you know. So okay.
And then Ashkenaz and Sfardim usually don't put on a talus.
Oh well, yeah, I mean,
That's a
Nusach
separate
Sfard
issue.
by the Hasidim, they also don't.
No,
Yeah,
so just this Ashkenaz.
yeah, the Ashkenazim are a little bit more formal, you know. So anyway, his argument is v'kol shekain b'nidon didan shahatalish shal miyuedet lahash Allah. He says certainly in a case where it's the shul's talus, which is meant to be lent out, upashat shadas hagaboyim lahaknos lo es atalis b'matan al manas lahachzer kedei sheyuchal levarich alea. And obviously the gaboyim, you see here, he's assigning the ownership of the talus to the gaboyim because they're the custodians of the shul's property. And so therefore, they certainly would want to give the talus as a temporary matana to anyone who's going to use the talus so that he can make a bracha. Uchavar pasak moran b'shulchan aruch b'din adam shenasan shor lachaver al menashiach tzarinu lo tov shloshim yom. So the Shulchan Aruch deals with the following case. Person gives an ox to his friend on the condition that he returns it within 30 days. Umeit hashor b'toch hazman shehu patur milashalim olav. And so if the ox dies during that period of time, he doesn't have to return it. Why? Because it was given to him as a gift. It was a matana almanas lahachzir. It was a gift during that period. It wasn't just a borrowed animal. It was a gifted animal where the gift would have an expiration date. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that if while the ox was mine, not just in my possession, but was actually mine legally, that it dies, I don't have to pay for it because it died when it was my ox. So I don't have to return the ox to you. I don't have to pay for the ox. So you see from that illustration that when you receive something as a gift, you're not liable for onus. Because of Asmasha Harashbam Beperak Yishnochlin, because of Dafilu Beginei Vavaveda Potter, De'eno Alav Ela Keshomer China. And the Sma writes that according to the Rashbam, you're not even liable for theft or loss when it's yours temporarily. All you are is like a Shomer Chinam because it's yours. The Chain Kasav Harash, the Das Rabbeinu Yeshaya. Okay, so we've got, this is a lot of ground to cover. What I would like to discuss is this whole concept of, is it really a matan al manas la'achzir? And why does the talus have to belong to you in order for you to be able to make a bracha on it? We're making certain assumptions in halacha that we really would probably benefit from actually seeing the original halacha. I know it's in Siman Yud Dalid in the Shulchan Aruch. Let's just take in the remaining minute that we have, let's just take a quick look at the halacha. My computer's taking a little time. Let's close this. Close this. Let's take a look at all right, let me just see that I thought it said the Magen Avram in Siman Yud Dalid. Siman Yud Dalid Sif Dalid. Mutar likach talis chavera. Oh, I'm in the wrong chapter. Sorry. Okay. Mutar litol talis chavera levarich aleha ובלבד שיקפל אותה עם מצאה מקופלת. You're allowed to borrow your friend's talis without his permission and to make a bracha on it, provided that if you found it folded, you have to fold it when you're done. Agav v'hu adin b'tefillin, and the same halacha applies to tefillin, says the Rama. Aval aser lilmod misfarim shel chaver below daito, d'chashinan shema yikra otam belimudo. But the Rama says, but you're not, we've talked about this before, you're not allowed to borrow someone's sefer without their knowledge, lest you tear a page. And whether we discuss whether the halacha still applies anymore today with today's modern Sfarim. All right, let's continue this in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Okay? Have a great day, everybody.